Reading 34 is The Schooling of Latino Children by Luis C. Moll and Richard Ruiz. Moll and Ruiz argue for educational sovereignty for Latino students, and they propose 5 strategies to help create positive social change in the institution of education. The concept of educational sovereignty is a means of challenging the legacy of control and imposition that characterizes the education of Latino students in this country. Educational sovereignty means that communities create their own infrastructures for development, including mechanisms for the education of their children that capitalize on rather than devalue their cultural resources. These forms of education must address Latino self-interest or self-determination while limiting the influence of the Anglo-centric whims of the majority that historically have shaped their schooling. Immigrant groups are expected to acquiesce to the expectation that they become Americans as quickly as possible, with the school as primary agent of the transformation. Although school achievement levels for these groups have in general been low, studies suggest variations depending on such factors as age on arrival, previous schooling experiences, the existence of social support networks within the receiving community, effort expended on studies, and social class. In the Southwest, the schools used 2 primary methods of social control, both intended to preserve the status quo by denying the Mexican population the knowledge necessary to protect its political and economic rights and to advance economically in society. One method was exclusion from schooling, which entailed not enforcing the compulsory school laws. The second method, more relevant for this study, was to control the content and purpose of schooling. Public officials wanted Mexican children in schools, but segregated so they could be controlled and indoctrinated, so they could be Americanized, learn English, and rid themselves of their native language and customs, which the officials deemed detrimental to assimilation and to the maintenance of a unified nation. This strategy springs from the same ideology used to justify the separate schooling of Indian African American children, and it is the same strategy pursued today in California and other states through initiatives designed to eliminate bilingual education, to impose a highly controlled English monolingual education, and to make it illegal to use languages other than English in school. This dual strategy of exclusion and condemnation, divesting Latino students of their primary resources, their language and culture, is what Valenzuela has called subtractive schooling. This form of schooling has become a major feature of the education of poor and working-class Latino students all over the country. It results in disdain for what one knows and what one is, influences children's attitudes towards knowledge, and undermines their personal competence. Latinos constitute the majority of students at Los Angeles USD and statewide, and they are largely working class and poor, but the teaching corps is primarily white and middle class and English monolingual as well. The academic performance of Latino students is generally low. The dropout rate for grades 9 through 12 for Latinos and for African Americans exceeds 20%, a figure that also reflects the national trend. However, within Los Angeles USD, even taking this profile into account, about 41% of Latino students, 46% for all students in the district, and 30% county-wide who graduate are eligible for entrance into the University of California or California State University system. This percentage is clearly a positive development, although the white graduates' percentage of eligibility is much higher at 57%, a significant difference. The most recent is a passage on June 2, 1998, of Proposition 227, banning bilingual education. This proposition is part of an insidious pattern of oppressive actions aimed at Latinos, maneuvers that have successfully circumvented legislative channels where Latinos may hold some leverage, especially in California. Consider the corrosive ideological context that such a law perpetuates, establishing Spanish as a pariah language in the schools, privileging English exclusively, and demonstrating clearly how only the interests that an elite Anglo monolingual community deems worthwhile can be represented in the schools. A second issue is the prominence of reductionist pedagogies, as illustrated by the phonics reading mandates. These mandates require, under penalty of law, employing English language phonic drills as the only way to teach beginning reading, usually as part of a highly rigid and prescriptive package curriculum imposed on teachers and students. The intent is to reduce or eliminate teacher autonomy by dictating what and how they teach. The emphasis is on challenging the ideological and structural constraints that are so dominant in the schooling of Latino children through a strategic and vigorous agency that builds on the culturally grounded resources of children, families, and communities. Mole and Ruiz give some strategies. They are mediating institutional arrangements, activating cultural resources, interethnic coalitions, transnational dynamics, and linguistic human rights. We're going to focus on 3 of the themes that authors have found that might help shape a future educational agenda for Latino students. These themes emphasize the need to create strategic alliances and enhancing the educational landscape of these students, especially in the changing demographic context of the United States, and the need to stimulate new theoretical thinking about educational issues. Again, these themes are interethnic coalitions, transnational dynamics, and linguistic human rights. Importantly, we should focus on the concept of educational sovereignty. The concept of educational sovereignty is the mediating agency needed to challenge such conditions. This educational sovereignty must, 1, attend to the larger historical structures and ideologies of schooling, with the goal of making educational constraints, especially those related to social class, visible and unstable. Secondly, to teach and learn as part of a broader education ecology. And 3, tapping into existing social and cultural resources in schools, households, and communities in promoting change.